Today is Thursday, the 16th of July, and it's the feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And in this Diocese of Salford, in England, it's a solemnity. Every diocese has its major feast of Our Lady, and here it's Our Lady of Mount Carmel. I think that was decided by our first bishop here since the Reformation, Bishop William Turner. He'd been the rector of St. Chad's, not this building, and another St. Chad's, its predecessor in the centre of Manchester. And he'd been rector there, and he was made Bishop of Salford in 1851. And it was a time, he was from there into the 1870s, and it was a time when Manchester grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. Large numbers of immigrants came in, especially at that time from Ireland with the potato famines, and the parishes were full. And there was disease, cholera as well. Lots of his priests were dying. And Bishop Turner had always had a devotion to Our Lady of Mount Carmel. In fact, she appears in his coat of arms. This is the coat of arms from our refectory here. And so he decided to extend his love of Our Lady of Mount Carmel and the scapula that she'd given to the world by making her the patron of the diocese. And he promoted in every parish this devotion, and confraternities sprang up. Here in St. Chad's parish, there was a confraternity, and we have a grave in our garden of the confraternity members. There's room for lots and lots of them on the inscription, and I think there are 6 or 8 here. I don't know how they fitted them in. They probably stood them upright to get them in. Anyway, united in life and united with death, in love and in the protection of Our Lady. Now, the brown scapula is widespread. You see it everywhere. And it's become more and more popular because of Fatima and Our Lady saying about the rosary and the scapula. The promotion by the popes, especially John Paul II, he wore it throughout his life. And so it's become one of those sacramentals of the Church, which is pretty much universal. Now, sacramental, well, a sacrament, the 7 sacraments, they contain in themselves what they talk about. And they bring about themselves what they talk about, and what they signify. But sacramentals, they point us towards a grace from God. They express for us the meaning of a grace from God. What do I mean by that? Well, if you take an idea of God's protection for us against wicked spirits, the sacramental of that is holy water. If you take the general idea of repentance, the sacramental idea of that are the ashes of Ash Wednesday. If you take the general idea of God's illumination and light, the sacramental for that are blessed candles. And if you take the idea of Our Lady's love for us, and Our Lady's protection over us, and our trust in her, the sacramental of that is the scapula. Lots of different scapulas, but today we're talking about the brown scapula of Mount Carmel. Okay, so the historical background of it. This is really interesting, actually. The Carmelites looked to the prophet Elijah as their founder. Do you remember in Mount Carmel? The prophets of Baal at the bottom. And Elijah, and the great dispute that they had, and the prophets of Baal, their sacrifice wasn't accepted, and Elijah's was accepted. So in thanksgiving, he killed them all. And he knew he had the fury of the queen. And so he fled and he went up into Mount Carmel. And there he waited. And he was waiting for the drought to end. The drought had been sent by God as a punishment on Israel for its apostasy. Again. And he put his face on the ground into the dust. And he prayed and waited. And there's a lad there he had with him. He said, "Look over the sea, is anything happening yet?" And the lad said, "No, just the same as it's been for months." Elijah did that again and asked the lad again. No. And the third time, the lad said, "I can see a little cloud out there, the size of a man's fist rising from the sea." But Elijah knew that was the end of the drought. Now that little cloud arising, viewed from Carmel, that is a type of Our Lady, the beginning of the end of the drought, the beginning of our salvation. Now there were hermits, those who left the world to go into seclusion, to pray and do penance for the world. There were hermits on Mount Carmel from the earliest years of Christianity, taking Elijah as their model, praying and waiting. And there were pilgrims going to the Holy Land, and they came across these hermits. Well, one of those pilgrims was from England, a chap called Simon Stock. And he'd gone and he lived with them. And then things became difficult in the Holy Land with the battles between the Islamic forces and then the Crusaders. And many of the hermits left Mount Carmel and they came to Europe. And Simon Stock brought some to England and they settled at Salford in Kent, where there's still a convent now, a monastery now. And of course they lived there and they prayed there. And there were another group of friars, the Dominicans and the Franciscans had also arrived a little earlier. And these Carmelite friars really had to make up their mind whether they were contemplatives or whether they were going to take up pastoral work. When they took up pastoral work, of course, they had to go to the universities, and that's when all the disputes arose. They had a great devotion to Our Lady, and there's a whole history of Carmel in England, which is fascinating. Anyway, Simon was in the middle of all this, and he was getting from left and right, and he was up to his eyeballs in administration and disputes. And so he left Salford, and he went they had a little house in Cambridge. Before the college, they had a college called Whitefriars, which was taken over by Queen's College in Cambridge. But he had a little house in a place called Chesterton, just outside Cambridge, and he went there to pray, to be quiet. And it was as he was there that Our Lady appeared to him. And she said, I've got it written down here, and she gave him this brown scapula. Before that, their scapulas had been striped in honour of Elijah's cloak, which fell through the flames to Elisha. But she gave him this new scapula. "Receive, my beloved son, the scapula of thy order. It is a special sign of my favour, which I have obtained for thee and thy children of Mount Carmel. He who dies clothed in this habit shall be preserved from eternal fire. It is a badge of salvation, a shield in time of danger, a pledge of special peace and protection." And that happened on the 16th of July in 1251 in Cambridge. So the scapula can be worn by anybody, but you have to be enrolled in the scapula. The priest blesses you, not the scapula. But it's you who are enrolled in the confraternity. Any Carmelite priest, any priest throughout the world now can do that. And remember, it is an outward sign. It's an outward sign of the love and trust we have in Our Lady, and also of her protection and her motherly love for us now. Seems it's pretty important. So, do that. May she protect you always. And God sent his holy angels to guard you, surround your goings out and your comings in, and all those of whom you love in this world and the next.